It's another Manly Monday, and I don't have my camera configured. Go me. Well, that's ironic because, as promised on last Friday, we are talking about a request from a viewer. God, that's so TV. What do you call it on YouTube? I don't freaking know. But the women are wonderful mentality. The idea that women don't do the stupid stuff men do. It's always the guy's fault. The world would be naturally better if women ran the world, etc., etc., etc. That I said, etc. Go me. But the commenter said that this led to them feeling insecure as a man in the past. And you guys might notice I fuck up a lot, and I own that, and I let it all hang out. And this is part of the reason I really dislike the women are wonderful mentality. And this is one of those things where, yes, it's Manly Monday, but we're talking about women. There's a reason for that. You can't have one without the other, right? So if you like this sort of thing, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. Okay, so this one's definitely a double-edged sword because what we know based on research is that women showing qualifications, women showing aptitude, and being likable are inextricably linked. For men, aptitude, being qualified, and being likable are not seen as intrinsically tied together. Now, rightly or wrongly, that is what it is. Okay? That hurts both groups. And I call this the Marge Homer Simpson phenomenon. This is not the Hera and Shira test. This is the Marge Homer Simpson thing. Marge has to constantly be Homer, you know. That was more Grover than Marge Simpson, but that's okay. But she's always the one that's got it together. You know, she's sort of like hot housewife thing going on. She's got her maiden name's Bouvier. That was Jackie Kennedy's maiden name, right? Like, that's not an accident. Marge is just way too good for Homer in every way. So Homer can fuck around and find out, go, woohoo! You know, and you see this all over the place. It's sort of the sitcom wife trope. And men don't like it. Women don't like it. I didn't like it in the Black Widow movie where Red Guardian was a fucking bore and a boob, and he still sold a fucking movie, and people love him, but it wasn't supposed to be his story, but now he's in the goddamn Thunderbolts. And anyway, nobody likes this, and yet everybody deals with it. Why? That's a complicated thing. And I do maintain that this is one of those things. Remember I said, and I'm going to repeat this a lot, that the damage done to boys/men in development is like scar tissue, and the damage done to women, girls/women in development is a raw wound. This is one of those things. Right? This idea that women have to exude perfection outwardly is something I rejected when I was still doing Ed and Red's night party. I wanted to do stupid shit. I wanted to sometimes be the, the Jerry Lewis, not the Dean Martin. It was tough when you're doing duo comedy. If you listen to the Ed and Red podcast, there is sort of a handoff that we do there. I fucking love two women talking because I can be the absolute idiot while Song does the heavy lifting. Fun fact, back in the old theater days, the old vaudeville days, the straight man, the guy who didn't get the punchlines, got 60% of the take. The funny guy, the Lou Costello, the Jerry Lewis, only got 40% of the take because the straight man was a harder job. Now, we couldn't use the term straight man now because, heteronormativity, but it is tougher. One of the greatest straight men in the history of comedy was Marilyn Monroe. When I did Ed and Red's Night Party, I watched her. I watched Mae West so I could switch between the two of them. Because Mae West, got to talk about, holding a quarter between her butt cheeks. Whereas Marilyn Monroe was the setup to the joke. The comedian, the known comedian, was always the punchline. But you got to know how to throw to the joke. You got to set it up so they can throw it down. And I wish we treated gender relations more like that than women are these superior, perfect, angelic beings, and men are, the quintessential moment for Homer Simpson, because I play the saxophone, was when Homer takes Lisa's, baritone sax and goes, saxophone, saxophone, and him and Bart are, out in the driveway with pots on their heads running into each other. And everybody loses in that, right? Because men get a level of freedom at the cost of, a virtue check. Whereas women have to be stick up the ass all the time or be seen as annoying, which I get all the time, and it drives me crazy because I own it, because what choice do I have, right? Cringe. Yeah, I deliberately show up here in a freaking t-shirt, hair just minimal makeup, because that's the point. Because people here like me for my opinions. They don't need it all the time. They are fine when I accidentally post excessive boobage t-shirt pictures. But that's not what they're here for, right? That is deliberate. That is a choice. If you've seen my former work, I was a professional pinup model. If I had to turn that on now, I would. I choose not to, because of this shit. I do think that we need more examples of women just being, I'm going to come here and talk to you, and I'm not going to be in full face, and my hair's not going to be done, and I'm wearing a freaking Walmart t-shirt. I actually think this is Joe Fresh, not Walmart. My fast fashion brand drop. There you go. Sponsor me. No, I'm kidding. But I do this deliberately because of this bullshit that, women are some sort of perfected being. And I find it very interesting that this topic was requested from, from a male viewer for Manly Monday, because they said he said, gender neutral pronouns by default, I don't have to here. He said that, women don't do the stupid stuff men do. It's always the guy's fault. Women would naturally be better. World would naturally be better if women ruled the world. Yada, yada, yada. This was a thing in 70s feminism. Obviously, this is carried forward in things like The Handmaid's Tale and a horrendous book that's being adapted called The Power. But, this idea that women are just naturally superior. Well, okay, let's face it, individual results may vary. And I remember when I was doing the late night show, jiggle physics plus feminist theory equals Ed and Red's Night Party. But I went in there wanting authenticity, as opposed to the idea that women were some kind of superior being. So every woman on the show, whether they were a dancing girl, whether a girl in the hot tub, whether they're a guest, me, obviously I was mic'd, but I wanted every woman on the set to have the opportunity to talk at will. There was a floater with a microphone. So if a woman just had sort of an outburst, one of the dancers had an outburst and they said something, all right, that was a thing, content, we'd go to it. Bless the director on that one, because that was a quick move. But, I wanted that because it didn't always go well, right? It wasn't always genius. And I wanted authenticity over perfection. So if there was a female cast member who was really physically smoking hot and dumb as a post, well, okay. That's what she was, because that's okay. And then we had, one dancer who was a triple major in classics, history, and psychology, I believe. And when she talked, she was super smart. But I wanted to show that all women were not one thing on a show geared towards men. Because I think both groups lose when this idea that women are angels and men are devils becomes the norm. Not only does it normalize and center bad behavior, the men who behave poorly, instead of normalizing and centering and therefore rewarding the men that behave well, but it also puts women at a disadvantage. More on that in a bit. I want to say one thing about normalizing bad male behavior. I have been absolutely stunned by the number of really great guys that I know that I not only legitimately like, but respect the hell out of. That, when She-Hulk does a thing about the internet, sees that as sort of kicking the nerd boys. Because I don't read that at all, and I find it fascinating that legit good guys, like any woman would do very, very well to be involved with these guys, think the show is talking about them when they go to the terrible subsection of men in humanity. And it makes me think about the inverse of an old Chris Rock sketch about women listening to hip hop. And I just thought this was hilarious because this is me with hip hop. Chris Rock, I don't think I can say it on YouTube, but he'd emulate these really, really horrendous, like misogynist rap lyrics and talk about women on the dance floor, like dancing to it. And it's like, how can you listen to this music? How can you dance to this music? He ain't talking about me. That's the woman cope to that stuff. And I really find it fascinating that men don't process things the same way. Men don't seem to have, or a lot of men who deserve to have it, don't have the she ain't talking about me filter, right? And the reason that bit of Chris Rock stand-up is funny is because it is a cope. Because nobody liked misogynist rap lyrics, but it was a good beat. And he ain't talking about me. So why shouldn't I enjoy the song? But that's why you can't just switch roles. That's why you can't just, take a character like, I don't know. You can't take a character like Superman and one-to-one translate it to a female character, to a woman. Supergirl's not Superman, Wonder Woman's not Superman, Stargirl's not Superman, like so on and so forth. The Stargirl TV series is doing a really interesting job at showing that Stargirl is not Starman. And I do think that DC had this brief shining moment where they had the opportunity to show why Wonder Woman is not just the female equivalent of Superman when she snapped Maxwell Lord's neck and they fucked it up. Fuck you, DC. But the show The Boys is really, really good at showing that certain archetypes are inherently female, certain archetypes are inherently male, and you can't just swap the two because of this imbalance, right? Stormfront lasts one season-ish, Homelander's like final boss on the whole freaking thing. There's a reason for that. But, on the flip side, then you get the challenges with Huey, who has the potential to be a super awesome dude if he leans into what he's good at and stops trying to be a traditional fucking superhero. And I mean, obviously, this is where my character, social justice warrior, came from. The warrior, hero who had secret aspirations. He really, really, really wanted to be a sidekick. He really did. Like, he's support class. He's a tank. He doesn't really want to hurt anyone but himself. Please give him someone to follow. Please, please, please. And, that's why him and Princess Sparkle Muffin are so good together, right? Um, and I did that deliberately because it was sort of the flip side of my challenges with the whole thing. Playing that foil female character really, and exploring, pinup modeling. I deliberately did, when I did the pinup calendar, there was one that was inspired by the wet t-shirt contest of Panama City Beach, Florida, where, yeah, it was a wet t-shirt. It was a white t-shirt. It was sort of see-through, but it was, let's just take full makeup, throw a bunch of water on me, and then I'm going to curl up in a fucking, it's the same alley as one of the shooting locations in The Boys. But I'm just going to curl up in a doorway. There's your wet t-shirt. Obviously not the same effect, right? Pointed, pointed, pointed. Because I wanted one image in that calendar that wasn't perfected for a reason. And it's that. I am a meta pinup. I did deconstruct sort of pinup modeling. I love pinup. I love classic pinup. I love the art form. It's completely performance. I can teach it to anyone. That's what I find so fascinating about it. And that's why I know that the perfected feminine is just bullshit. And here's why it's damaging to both currently defined genders. One, as the commenter said, it gives men issues, right? And those are very real. If you are inherently default inferior, if that's what you're raised with, that does damage your sense of what you can do as a human, right? But it also damages women because of that short-term virtue advantage that in the long term is actually a big problem. Because, they did a survey. It's a Washington Post article. I hope it's not paywalled. I'll link to it. But the number one reason that there aren't more women in both top executive business positions and high political offices are because women are held to higher standards. That's the number one. Now, in top executive business positions, it's tied with not ready to hire elect women leaders, but 43% of respondents said the reason there aren't more top executive business positions are that women are held to higher standards. 38% said that's the reason there aren't more women in high political offices. Now, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is the test case of how you can make being reprehensible work for you. But that's the exception that proves the rule, right? And what happens is that women leaders are by default seen as scoring higher on presumed or assumed honesty and ethics. But that means the standard is set higher. So every time they make a mistake, and I have gone through this myself, the number of times I have been called a liar because of something that was an honest mistake. If I had a nickel, oh my God, I'd be a billionaire. And I see a lot of predominantly male YouTubers talk shit about everything, and some of them have directly come at me And my ethical standards and integrity are like significantly above theirs, and it was basically called a wash. And I know that. And so now if somebody comes at me, if I don't have receipts, I don't even bother fighting. Think I'm a bitch, think I'm a liar, think I'm evil, think I'm literally the devil. Do what the fuck you want. It's not worth me fighting because I'm not going to win this fight. But then, of course, what does that do? It normalizes the bad men. It normalizes the guys who are assholes. And I've talked before about this screening process women do about, are you a potential rapist? And some people reacted very badly to that, but it is true. And that's because we normalize bad men. Because we see, collectively, not me, I don't believe this is true. Well, other than Song, she's my better in every way. But I'm kidding. But not. But we do normalize this. And so a lot of guys who are just, they have an awkward moment, are sorted into this bad men category. And it's a problem because, that's the other scene in She-Hulk that I thought was, yes, this is a thing. This is not me, but this is a thing where she's at the wedding and she's miserable and drunk. And this perfectly nice guy comes up to her who reminds me of 3 of my damn friends. But she totally misses it because she's so mired in her Fleabag era misery that she blows the opportunity to go fight with Titania. And there's no clear winner on that. And that's part of the reason the show speaks to me, because when you're reading it through Girl World, you're seeing all the good dudes she misses because of that obsession with the self that women are forced to have because of this higher aptitude and virtue standard. And we could fight forever about who has it worse. We could show all the reasons it harms men. We can show all the reasons it harms women. We can show all the reasons it benefits men. But ultimately, it's a wash. It's just, like I said, scar tissue versus raw wound. Nobody comes out better for this dichotomy because it erases the individual and it inhibits honor. And I want to end because tomorrow's Yom Kippur and this is the Rosh Hashanah period. And this is the Eshet Hayil. It is a Song of Solomon about women. And it's for Christians, it's Proverbs 31:10-31. But this is the ideal of womanhood that we get in the Songs of Solomon. And I use this as a counterpoint that is significant to give you a sense of perspective as to this. This was not always how women were seen. This is a retro medievalist take on womanhood. I want you to really listen to this dialogue because it's powerful for me. I appreciate it. I actually named a pinup calendar after the first line. No joke. I modeled as Ivy Valentine in it. A woman of valor who can find, for her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband safely trusts in her, and he has no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She rises also while it is yet night and gives food to her household and a portion to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She girds her loins with strengths and makes strong her arms. She perceives that her merchandise is good. Her lamp goes out not by night. She lays her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She stretches out her hand to the poor, yea, she reaches forth her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She makes for herself coverlets. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates. When he sits among the elders of the land, she makes linen garments and sells them, and delivers girdles unto the merchants. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the law of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and eats not the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you rise above them all. Grace is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. And for all the dated language in reference to the Lord, that's a much more balanced ideal woman than the ideal of perfection. Inherent perfection. Perfection that you're just born into instead of a woman of valor born of hard work and honor. These are the two versions of womanhood that I weigh, and I choose the Song of Solomon. And, you know, the fact that SJW is named Solomon was not me. That was a backer. Someone paid to write that backstory, so I can't take credit for that, but it was perfect when I read it. I'm like, yeah! But yeah, I'll leave you with that because tomorrow's Yom Kippur. And so I'm in that mood. And I'll leave you with that. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching Manly Mondays.